Well, hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Am I loud enough? Are you sure? Okay. I'm sorry. I'm giving a former neighbor a hard time. Welcome to the July 2023 Legacies and Lunch, a hybrid program of the Cowles Butler Center for Arkansas Studies. I'm Heather Register-Zabindon, the outreach coordinator. I'm not the outreach coordinator anymore, man, I went back there. I'm the programs and website coordinator for the Roberts Library, which is right across the street from us today. So today and for the next approximately 17 months, we will be presenting from the UA Little Rock downtown facility. That's at 333 President Clinton Avenue. I want to thank Marta and Emily for hosting us and giving this program a home while Maine is being renovated. If you want to sign up for the email list, you can either get with Madeline in the back of the room, or you can go to robertslibrary.org and subscribe there or sign up there. Also, please consider a donation to the Cowles Foundation to support the programs of the Butler Center for Arkansas Studies and the Encyclopedia of Arkansas. You can go to robertslibrary.org or encyclopediaofarkansas.net to give a one-time or recurring monthly donation. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's talk is being live streamed to YouTube and will be available on the Cowles YouTube channel immediately following the program. So you can go back and rewatch it. And the speaker will answer questions both in the room and from the Zoom chat for folks at the end of the session. Okay, so today we're all joined by Danielle Afsordeh to talk about New Deal Parkitecture in Little Rock. Danielle is the community outreach archivist for the Butler Center for Arkansas Studies at the Central Arkansas Library System. She has a master's in public history from the University of Arkansas at Little Rock and has a research interest in women's history and the urban built environment. So everybody give Danielle a warm welcome.
Thanks for being here. It's kind of a big crowd in person. As Heather mentioned, I am the community outreach archivist here. I'm based out of the Roberts Library, but I do programming across the system. So if what I present today excites you and you want to learn more about Little Rock and Arkansas history, again, I do programming across the system, and all of that is advertised through the Roberts Library website. So I'd encourage you to look on there to see what's upcoming. So I do have a research interest in the built environment and a personal interest in Little Rock parks. I'm an outdoorsy person, you could say. I ride a mountain bike, I hike a lot, and I spent a lot of time in Boyle Park around these CCC structures there, which kind of piqued my personal interest. And also there's a wide breadth of source material for this talk in the Butler Center collections, which it's my whole job to promote the use and access to those collections. So that was a natural tie-in for me. Some of the collections material I'll be highlighting is the Arkansas State Parks Commission collection. It's a series of scrapbooks and maps that were created by the early State Parks Commission in the late 1920s and 1930s. And I have the scrapbook for Boyle Park here that I'll have images for on the slide, but since you're all here, those of you that are here in person, I thought you might like the opportunity to actually look at the physical object. I just ask that you don't take your cookies and Coke over there. Just clean your hands off as best as you can, and afterward we can take a look at that if you'd like. I also relied on the WPA Weekly Digest, which was a periodical, emphasis on the periodic. It was not weekly. I don't know how often they put it out, but it definitely didn't happen every week, as the name suggests. There was also the Arkansas CCC Pictorial Review for 1933 to 1934 that had a lot of great photographs of the CCC work in the state. I also relied on the WPA Writers Project Report on Negroes in Arkansas that was edited by Bernie Babcock, and the Pulaski County Sports and Recreation Photograph Collection. I'd like to note that pretty much all of our topical photograph collections have been recently digitized and are available online. So you can explore those at arstudies.com. And specifically, the sports and recreation photograph collection features a lot of great photographs of places that we all know and love in the city. And then I also relied on historic newspapers, which were accessed both through our instance of newspapers.com, which has the Arkansas Democrat and Gazette, as well as Chronicling America, which we highlighted in a Legacies launch a couple of months ago. So to just get started, the CCC and WPA programs in Arkansas are best known for their contributions to highways and the burgeoning state park system during the Depression era. Lesser known is their municipal work throughout the state. Notably, Little Rock has enduring examples of both CCC and WPA work in municipal recreation sites. These programs are responsible for much of the historic built environment in Little Rock's recreation areas, featuring the Parkitecture they are best known for. Their work transformed these spaces and ensured their continued value to the city.
Still no?
No.
Strategy.
Okay, thank you. Many conflate the work of the Civilian Conservation Corps and the Works Projects Administration. It's easy to do because much of what they constructed and the other projects they engaged in were very similar. They were unique programs to one another though, and the fundamental differences help identify their work across the state. The brainchild of newly elected President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the CCC was created in 1933 with two purposes: to provide outdoor employment to unemployed young men, and to accomplish badly needed work in the protection, improvement, and development of the country's natural resources. Companies of 200 men were organized around the country. During this period, 77 companies undertook 106 projects across Arkansas. Central Arkansas served as a hub for the CCC work in the state in several different ways. The district headquarters for the state was located at the Rock Island Railroad in Little Rock, as well as the sub-district office for the Little Rock area. Once selected for service, CCC members were sent to Camp Pike, now Camp Robinson, for training in northern Pulaski County prior to deployment to camps in the four sub-districts across the state. Reserve officers of the Army ran the camps. At the camps, members were provided food, clothing, shelter, and an education. The Department of Labor selected men through state agencies and welfare offices. The CCC recruited physically fit, unmarried young men between 18 and 25 initially, and this was expanded to 17 to 28 by 1935. CCC workers performed over 100 types of work, from planting trees to building parks to developing over 28,000 miles of hiking trails across the country. They also saved 40 million acres from erosion and built 47,000 bridges. After 9 years and 3 million enrollees, the CCC was dissolved by Congress on July 1st, 1942, with many of those still enrolled entering the war. When the CCC was dissolved, more than 200,000 Arkansas natives had served in the camps from coast to coast. Most CCC projects in Arkansas were in national forests or on state-owned property. The newly created state park system benefited greatly. The work program created roads, trails, lodges, cabins, campgrounds, amphitheaters, bathhouses, picnic pavilions, and beaches at 6 locations across the state. In Little Rock, the CCC uncharacteristically did municipal work, primarily in Boyle Park. Can you go to the next slide? Actually, no, you can stay here, sorry. The WPA was created in 1935, originally as the Works Progress Administration and later renamed the Works Projects Administration. In Arkansas, a state-level emergency relief administration had already been created, and those staff transitioned to the Arkansas division of the WPA. The initial director, W.R. Dias, for whom the Dias colony was named, worked to facilitate that transition in 1935 after work was already underway in the state. In Arkansas, the WPA provided much-needed social services and infrastructure improvements, while its salaries supported thousands of families and the merchants who depended on their businesses. WPA enrollees were assigned to the same communities in which they already lived and did not have an age or ability requirement like the CCC. Also, unlike the CCC projects in the state, WPA projects required match funding from a local or state sponsor. Most tasks did not require an extensive education. The WPA is remembered most for roads, bridges, and buildings constructed by its operations division, as well as the work of the Writers Project to document the narratives of the formerly enslaved in everyday life during the era. The operations division accounted for the largest share of the budget in Arkansas, as well as Pulaski County specifically. The county received the most federal money in the state at $13.9 million. A total of 40,467 workers put in over 5 million hours over the course of the program in the county. And within the first year, the workers had earned over $1 million. WPA funding directed to recreational projects in Little Rock allocated $389,651 to public buildings and $195,649 to recreational work. By November of 1935, 6,000 people were employed by the WPA in Pulaski County. Their work in Little Rock is some of the most unique in the state. The WPA was most involved in school and road construction projects in other parts of the state, but in Little Rock, a large amount of their work was on public recreational facilities, like the Little Rock Zoo, then known as Fair Park Municipal Zoo, the Fair Park Golf Course, the Fair Park Pool, the Robinson Memorial Auditorium, Historic Arkansas Museum, then known as the Territorial Restoration, Lamar Porter Athletic Field, and many others. For the sake of time, I'll focus on their work in Fair Park and at Lamar Porter Field. By late 1941, the budgetary demands of preparing for war had forced most programs to end. The effects of these actions were less painful than would have been the case earlier due to the increased employment in private industry caused by defense spending with the outbreak of World War II. In June of 1943, the WPA ceased operation, having spent almost $117 million of federal money in the state, along with $36 million from local and state sponsors. Now I am actually ready. Next slide. Thanks. Parkitecture or rustic style is the prevailing architectural style employed by the CCC in Arkansas and across the country. Although WPA buildings did often rely on native materials, they tended to be more refined in their appearance than those attributed to the CCC. CCC structures were almost always found in park and forest settings, while WPA buildings were more often constructed for community use and tended to be in more urban settings. By the 1930s, the rustic or parkitecture style was an accepted concept for use in parks. The style is characterized by the effort to blend in with its surrounding natural setting and using local materials. In Arkansas, these designs featured natural stone and timber, which was often acquired through CCC forestry projects. The pavilions, lodges, cabins, and other buildings constructed by the CCC in Arkansas recreation areas reflected a desire to blend in with their surroundings and relied often on handwork, because large machinery was not often a budgetary concern in these construction projects and men were readily available. As an architectural movement, the rustic style as we know it is largely confined to the period 1933 to 1942. Its beginnings are derived from early NPS camp designs from the early 20th century, and its end is marked by the World War II period, as such labor-intensive projects were economically unfeasible and the labor was not available. And next slide, yeah, thank you. Now I'll talk about the CCC and Boyle Park specifically. Boyle Park was created when John F. Boyle donated a 231-acre tract of land in the southwestern area of the city to the city of Little Rock in 1929. The park begins at 26th Street and Boyle Park Road, and Robb Creek runs through the park. In the deed, Boyle stipulated that the land was to be allocated for recreational use. If the property ever ceased to be used as a park, the title of the land would revert to the Boyle family. Boyle Park was the third of its kind in the city. It was preceded by MacArthur Park in downtown and also Park near Midtown, surrounded by the Hillcrest neighborhood. Because of the donation of land occurring the same year as the stock market crash, the property remained undeveloped until the 1930s. In 1933, CCC Company 3777, under direction of the State Parks Commission, created the Boyle Park project to help develop the land for the city's recreational use. It's hard to say what drove this decision, as almost all of the other CCC park infrastructure in the state is related to state parks specifically. 5 buildings were constructed in 1937. 2 pavilions, a spring house, a caretaker's cabin, and a combination water tower pump house garage. 2 culverts and a low water bridge were also completed that year. The stones for these structures were brought in from Barradin Mountain northwest of Little Rock. Signs were also created for the park by the CCC in collaboration with a blacksmith. The low water bridge, spring house, pavilions, and caretaker's cabin remain today. All that remains of the pump house are the stone walls and foundation. A modern roof was added to use the facility for storage. The last major effort to rehabilitate these structures within the park was completed in 1994 after a bond issue allowed for funding. At the time, the Parks and Recreation Department stated that the work would be all the improvement available for Boyle Park in the foreseeable future. It was listed on the National Register of Historic Places on September 22nd, 1995. In the 21st century, the park is primarily used by Little Rock's residents as a place to bike and hike within the city. The trails are maintained by community volunteers, largely from the Central Arkansas Trail Alliance. Trail workers have rediscovered CCC contributions lost to time, including trailside fire pits. Next slide. When exploring the State Parks Commission 1935 scrapbook that we have right over here, documenting Company 377's work in Boyle Park, I found this photograph on one of the final pages. An accompanying paragraph reads, "We desire to mention that half a mile south of Boyle Park and not far from the Hot Springs Pike on 10 acres of land formerly owned by the Colored Sunday School Union, but deeded to them by the State Parks Commission, our company has built a large recreational building for colored people. The building is constructed of large weathered stone, logs, and rough sawn boards. The huge fireplace on the side of the building, together with the stone foundation structure extending to the windowsills and on the corner of the roof, present both beauty and permanency. Because of Company 377's prominent work developing Devil's Den and Lake Catherine, their work across the state is very well documented. I had not previously seen any mention of the development of a Black recreational area by Company 377. All of the other spaces were restricted to use by white citizens only prior to integration. There was no other documented work by any CCC or WPA project in Black recreational spaces in the state. It is possible that the development of Watkins State Park, the Black State Park noted in a 1941 WPA report on recreational facilities in Arkansas, was developed with federal aid, but it is very underdocumented and not clear that the park was ever truly developed at all. Further, by the time the fight for a Black city park that would eventually become Gillum Park took shape in the late 1940s, the local Black newspaper, the Arkansas State Press, cited that there were no publicly supported recreational facilities for Black residents in Little Rock. So what is this building? I reviewed a map from the same collection that showed the development of CCC structures in Boyle Park, just in case it was noted. The key at the bottom right that I've pictured here shows where this park might have been located. I was able to compare this park to a modern section and township map of Little Rock and discovered that West End/Union Park was listed there. This seemed too coincidental, knowing that the CCC company noted the land was donated by the Sunday School Union. A search in the city's board of directors minutes led to the discovery that in fact this was the same site. The city annexed the area around the park in 1961 and acquired the deed to the park in 1967. In 2008, citizens of the John Barrow neighborhood petitioned the city to rename the park from West End Park to Union Park in recognition of the Sunday School Union's original donation that they had discovered the history of. Additionally, in 2019, the city approved funding to build a pavilion at the park that would utilize what was noted as the remains of a 1930s structure. A survey of the property conducted in 2018 noted that the structure was built by a WPA project, but this scrapbook indicates it was instead built by this CCC company in 1935. So it is likely the only CCC park construction in the state created for Black residents. Unfortunately, the building did succumb to fire prior to 1961. Next slide. I've yet to find documentation of the fire, but the current pavilion has the original foundation and fireplace of that structure, as well as the restrooms originally built. And thanks to Guy Lancaster for grabbing these photographs for me on his way home from work the day we discovered it. Now I'll shift to discussing the WPA work in Fair Park and Lamar Porterfield. Fair Park, now the area occupied by War Memorial Stadium, the Little Rock Zoo, and the now closed War Memorial Golf Course, was uniquely situated to benefit greatly from WPA funds. The State Fair Commission acquired the area known as Fair Park in 1868, and the land changed hands to the city of Little Rock when they purchased the area in the early 1920s to establish a state fair in the area. The commission's hopes were realized in 1922 when the Arkansas State Fair was held in Fair Park for the very first time. With the success of the state fair, the city began to develop this area. A 1924 design plan for the park included a zoo, golf course, amusement park, and stadium. Though the fair continued to be held intermittently at the site after the crash in 29, many of the original development plans hadn't been able to come to fruition due to the economic impact of the Depression. It was not until the WPA stepped in that many of these ideas would finally be realized. The work completed at the Little Rock Zoo, founded in 1927, then called the Fair Park Municipal Zoo, between 35 and 37, set Little Rock apart in the state because it had the only municipal zoo in Arkansas. The WPA program completed the Cat House by 1937 at a cost of $80,000. It is now the Big Cat Cafe, as well as the Monkey House, which opened August 2nd, 1936, with a completed cost of $65,000. The WPA also built hoofed stock pens and a peanut house. 300 men constructed the federal projects at Fair Park at a total project cost of $151,000. Most of the structures built by the WPA were formed from native stone and are still standing today at the zoo. Not only did the WPA give people jobs in an otherwise challenging time, but these WPA projects set the tone for the architectural styles of zoos during the period. If you'd like to learn more about zoos during this period, I'm going to oddly recommend a work of fiction. The book West with Giraffes by Linda Rutledge does a great job of providing historical context for the development of zoos during the Depression era, and one of the main characters is also a giraffe, which are fantastic animals. The WPA structures made from native stone caught the eye of many Little Rock natives, and the use of the stone was soon adopted in the community more widely. Upon completion of the WPA projects, the zoo's value increased to $120,000. The zoo served as an ideal advertisement for New Deal projects because it offered both free entertainment for all ages as well as recreational facilities. The city of Little Rock used the zoo to give the public a clear visual representation of the physical transformations made possible by federal funding. Modern buildings and enclosures that featured technical innovations to promote sanitation and design concepts intended to improve animals' mental health replaced rundown structures with design flaws. These innovations transformed the Little Rock Zoo and ensured its long-term success in the city. Another step in fulfilling the city's vision for Fair Park was the completion of the golf course. Golf had become widely popular in the United States at the end of the 19th century, and the vision for a golf course in Fair Park was included in the 1924 design plan for the park. Construction of the 18-hole course had just begun in 1930 when the financial pressures of the Depression made their way to the city budget. Work stalled on building any facilities on the course, though it was open for public play after 1930 until the WPA stepped in between 1934 and 1937. They built the clubhouse, gazebo, and combination rest area bathroom, decorative stone pillars as well using the rustic architectural design. The pillars on the cart path north to south between holes 1 and 12 mark an entrance to the cart path. Each is approximately 4 feet high. The shelter bathroom is octagonal and includes natural cut stone enclosing on 4 sides. These were in active use until the course's closure in 2020. The last WPA improvement to Fair Park was the construction of the Fair Park swimming pool. Little Rock's first public swimming pool opened in Pulaski Heights amusement area known as White City on June 16, 1922. The pool operated for 17 seasons before finally closing in 1939 when the land was sold to developers to create a new subdivision in the city's fastest growing and exclusively all-white suburb. After the closure of the White City pool, the Little Rock Recreation Commission proposed a city bond to fund a 45% share in a new pool at a cost of $47,000. The other 55% came from the WPA. By 1941, the pool was completed. Its official title was the J. Kern Conway Pool, named after the chair of the Little Rock Recreation Commission and vice president of Little Rock's Federal Home Loan Bank. It was more popularly known as Fair Park Pool and then later as War Memorial Pool. On Friday, May 28, 1942, ahead of Memorial Day weekend, Kern Conway Pool opened for its first season. As with other public swimming pools across the country at the time, it proved wildly popular. Designed to accommodate 1,800 bathers, it was reportedly packed to capacity from the first day. The entrance pictured here on the far left mimics the native stone designs featured in the golf course and the zoo. The opening of the new pool highlighted the lack of similar facilities for the city's Black population. Under the terms of the U.S. Supreme Court's 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson decision, the court required separate but equal facilities for Black citizens. Clearly, Little Rock creating a publicly funded whites-only pool without any facilities whatsoever for Black residents violated that requirement. In 1949, the city finally passed a bond issue for the development of an African-American Gillum Park southeast of the city, which included a swimming pool. The pool opened on Sunday, August 20th, 1950. It operated on a segregated basis until 1964, when it was closed temporarily to avoid integration. It operated on and off as an integrated facility until it was permanently closed in 1989. As the WPA funneled money and workers into city projects, Little Rock began to show signs of financial recovery. In 1935, the city and federal government spent $224,000 in Fair Park for beautification and new construction. This funding represented 20 times the amount previously spent on Fair Park in all the years prior to the Depression. Without the WPA's contributions, it is likely that no recreational facilities would have been developed in Little Rock until after the post-war period. All the facilities mentioned were restricted to use by white citizens prior to integration. The last place I'd like to talk about is Lamar Porter Field. Lamar Porter Athletic Field has a regulation baseball field. It employs a poured concrete and steel beam construction method that is far different from the other parkitecture and rustic sites we've seen so far. The areas around the field, as pictured here, employed native stone in their design and construction. The field is located on the earliest site associated with the Boys Club in Little Rock and is listed on the National Register. The Boys Club movement started in the late 1800s. Boys Clubs provided supervised after-school activities and leadership training for disadvantaged boys. The clubs aren't affiliated with a religious organization by leadership or membership and are typically located inside of cities. Membership fees are kept low so that no child will be turned away by lack of money. The Little Rock Boys Club has its roots in the Newsboys Club, founded around 1912, when a group of young men, led by T.J. Craighead, used local Young Men's Christian Association facilities on Wednesday nights to help local boys seek better lives. Craighead, the first executive director of Little Rock Boys Club, remained active in the organization throughout his life, finally retiring as a regional director in 1959. The Newsboys Club then became the Citizenship Club, and the Little Rock Boys Club developed from this organization. The Boys Club officially began on July 14, 1914, when an organizational meeting was held. One of the noteworthy events of the early years of the Boys Club was the construction of this athletic field. Born on August 17, 1913, Lamar Porter was educated in Little Rock's public schools, attended Little Rock High School, and graduated from Sewanee Military Academy in Tennessee in 1931. Porter was a junior at Washington and Lee University in Virginia when he was killed on May 12, 1934 in an automobile accident. The land for the field was donated to the Little Rock Boys Club on the first anniversary of his death, which fell on Mother's Day. The donors were Porter's mother, his aunt, and his brother. The 10-acre plot is bordered by Capitol Avenue on the north, Brown Street to the west, Johnson Street on the east, and 7th Street to the south. When the donation was made, the Little Rock Boys Club served 2,554 boys, as well as 739 girls, who were granted use of the facilities at certain times. Construction on the complex by the WPA in the fall of 1934 took 18 months. 400 workmen took several weeks to clear trees, stumps, and underbrush from the wooded site as pictured here. The total cost was $122,244.53. The 53 cents is a special certificate. The federal government provided an additional $108,710.82 for the project. When the complex was complete, it held a lighted softball diamond with underground wiring, 4 lighted tennis courts, a regulation baseball diamond, a 1,500-seat grandstand with club room, shower, and locker rooms, restroom, and a concession stand. The complex was first used by Boys Clubs teams in the summer of 1936. By 1937, it was also being used by City Leagues and American Legion teams. At the time, the property also held an apparatus area with swings, slides, and jungle gyms, a small children's play area that included hammocks, small slides, and kindergarten tables, a play area for older children with facilities for handcrafts and quiet games, and other areas with courts for shuffleboard, marbles, horseshoes, handball, volleyball, and table tennis, as well as picnic areas and a stage. Throughout its history, the Boys Club produced some excellent ball players in the field, including New York Yankees catcher and manager Bill Dickey and Pat Seary, an outfielder with the Chicago White Sox. Only one, however, actually played at Lamar Porter Athletic Field, Baltimore Orioles third baseman and Hall of Fame member Brooks Robinson. The Lamar Porter Athletic Field, as the only site remaining from the early days of Little Rock's Boys Club, still hosts ball teams today and is owned by the Billy Mitchell Boys and Girls Club. In conclusion, the CCC and WPA contribute structures that change the landscape of Little Rock and enabled the city to experience financial recovery and provide recreational spaces to members of the community in times of financial crisis and later war. Today, these spaces remain integral to the Little Rock's built environment and continue to be an enduring piece of the city's story. Thanks. One more slide just has my contact information, and it says questions, I think, if you want to just, yeah.
Did you want to show the, or
Oh,
you just want them to come
yeah.
afterwards?
After we wrap up with questions, we can just kind of flip through it, yeah. I think showing it from up here wouldn't do it justice, so.
Well, and Lamar Porter Field used to regularly get used in film sets.
Oh.
Soldier Story,
Lexi Blues.
Lexi Blues. Maybe it's on the EOA.
It is on the EOA.
You have
Point to
memorized
you.
every entry?
Do what?
You haven't memorized every entry?
I'm not, it's online, so I.
He's just got like, he's just got like 6,500
Yeah.
entries memorized, not,
Easy, I don't know.
yeah. I'm full 7,000, so. Questions? Yes, sir.
Danielle, what, is there anything you can tell us about the architects for Boyle and Fair Park? Was it just NPS or?
Yeah, so I think that they used basically like sent out template instructions for pavilion structures. If you look between like Devil's Den, Lake Catherine, Boyle, all the pavilion structures are very, very similar, as is like most of the country's CCC pavilions. And I don't know specifically who the architects are, but I do know that it was derived from early NPS designs. Yes.
Just in the last few days, I saw something I'd not read before, that the old medical school building that's now the law school was a WPA project. Do you know anything about that? Or-
I don't. The list is very, very long because it provided the city and other entities an opportunity to get match funding on construction projects. So there's also like Robinson Auditorium and a couple of other structures that I didn't have time to mention, but I know that there were a ton of programs, and a lot of them are noted in the city minutes if you're looking for specific references. Unfortunately, the 30s and 40s aren't online though. You have to actually go to the clerk's office and look through minutes, so that can be annoying. Yes.
Do you know if the WPA was involved in Newt Park?
Nope, no. So I haven't found any reference that Allsop or Noop got any WPA funding. So I'm not sure if they did or not. It may be in those minutes. I haven't specifically looked for it. I tried to find out if Allsop was CCC or specifically WPA funded, and I wasn't able to find any reference to that. I think they may have just mimicked what was going on. Like I said, like the zoo especially really inspired native stone as a design element in recreational spaces. So it may have been developed a little later, like during the Second World War, and they just kind of mimicked what was already going on in other areas.
I think that was the waterworks. We lived just down the hill from there. And I think it was because there's some of the architecture up on the waterworks property that matches that native stone. It was, you could drive around it, but as my dad said, it was a real lover's lane.
Yeah, I bet it was.
Today.
It's a nice walk.
What if it had another name before Newt Park? I mean, we always called it Waterworks.
Newt was the mayor.
Yeah, but I wonder if there was a name for it, like it's on the list or something else.
Maybe.
So if anybody has questions on Zoom, I feel like I'm talking to like a cloud, but if anybody has questions on Zoom, they can type them in the chat and we'll take those.
Yes. So your slide about the unattributed structure got me thinking. I know this is a particular research interest of yours. Was there any other fun fact that you found in this journey that really stuck out to you?
I mean, I feel like that building was sort of it.
I was wondering if that was it.
Because we got the yeah, it was at the back of that scrapbook, and the scrapbook was just attributed to Boyle Park. So before I went and scanned a bunch of images out of it, I hadn't really looked at it that thoroughly because I wasn't the one who processed the collection. And so like there was no attribution of this extra building in the archival description. Which is one of the advantages of digitizing things, right? You find things you didn't see before or weren't existing in the original description of the item. And so once I found that image and its associated like description of the space, I was like, I don't think this is Boyle. I've spent a lot of time in Boyle. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's like the caretaker's cabin. I was like, no, that's noted earlier in the scrapbook. I think these are different buildings. So yeah, I definitely think that was like the big find, and I think kind of a big find for our understanding of CCC work in the state. So
That's awesome. Thank you.
While you don't specifically mention it in your presentation, you said you worked on other parks or you've looked at other parks and other sites in Little Rock. Did you ever come across anything on West Rock when you might have looked at the development of Allsop Park or New Park or?
I haven't found anything about West Rock specifically. I've done a little bit of research around like the Granite Mountain area because of Gillum, but nothing with West Rock specifically. No.
Yeah, I was wondering about Gillum Park. And is it CCC or is it?
No, so Gillum Park was later. So they didn't develop Gillum Park until the 50s. So it's after World War II, and the space is still there. You can still walk trails in what was Gillum Park if you want to. It's operated by the Audubon Society, but the park structures themselves are gone. The pool has been filled in, like there's nothing left.
Because the pool had like a big crack in it or something.
Yeah, it was not safe for most of the time it was in operation because it notoriously received less funding than
Yes.
other recreational spaces.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
You mentioned the oddity of the CCC doing these urban structures.
Yeah.
And I wonder if in your reading of the literature, if there was, providing leisure for urban populations, especially in a time of economic depression, if that was consciously a way of trying to tamp down on social disruption, give people an outlet.
Potentially, yeah, and you see that a lot more with WPA funding because most of the municipal work was a partnership between cities and the WPA. So I don't know why specifically the CCC agreed to do work on municipal land because otherwise they were only doing work on state land. Even the case with the Colored Sunday School Union, that land was deeded to the state. It was not deeded to Little Rock, and what didn't become a part of Little Rock until the 60s. So I really don't know like what made them choose Boyle as an area to develop, or if the city was like, we just don't have money to match for this, or what. At the time, Boyle, though it was technically owned by the city, it was not within the city limits. The area around it had not been annexed. So I don't know if it was just kind of seen as not really being a city space because no one really lived out there. So it's hard to know what the motivation was for that specific part because of that. I think the work in other recreational spaces in the city was probably for that purpose. I also find it really interesting that they managed to pass like a bond issue for spaces that were not available to a large subset of the population. So that's interesting too. I wouldn't think that would tamp down on feelings of animosity whenever you're having to pay for something you can't even use, but yeah.
Any other questions?
I'm just curious and probably don't have any more information. I think when we were researching the zoo like years ago, you talked about how like it was a whites only structure until integration, but I think we had like heard that it was rumored that like they would have certain days that they allowed it.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't know if you ever came across anything related to that.
Yeah, I didn't find anything official that said that there were
Yeah.
days. I mean, that probably would have been a decision of the zoo administration at the time or the parks department. Again, those minutes for the city, if they had like decided to do that, would be like a physically reading of the minutes thing and not doing a keyword search. So I haven't looked for that information, but that is interesting, and I would like to know if that was the case.
I don't think we ever found any actual documentation that said that, but it was just kind of like one of those
Rumored things,
rumor floating out in
Yeah.
the ether kind of things, but I don't think we ever got confirmation, so.
Probably a good question for an elder in the community to maybe,
Yeah.
if they weren't around then, would have known, a family member who had been to the zoo or something. So.
The pool at War Memorial is not, it's gone. And then they built the Jim Daly facility. So, yeah. And the amusement park. The amusement park was fun. I went there. It was, right? I mean, it was, what was the clown woman, Sally?
Oh, Laughing Sally.
She's a
Sort of
local
funny.
woman. Laughing Sally,
Yeah.
yes. I was gonna say something other disparaging, but
Oh, I think that's what she
laughing is better. So, any other questions? Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Danielle. So let me pull up my note. My note resaved Danielle, and when I was doing your bio from Parks.
Oh,
So
okay.
she's also certified archivist. That's the part I left out. Well, I just felt like I knew I was missing something. So next month, Ashley Claiborne will be here to talk about grassroots placemaking, fostering social capital and a sense of place in Arkansas. And so that'll be August 2nd, Wednesday, of course, at noon. And we will be back here at UA Little Rock downtown. You can also join us on Zoom, but we encourage people to come and hang out with us in person. We're fun. So, thank you everybody for coming and have a great day.